Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars drift past the main window. He had been commanding exploration missions for 12 years, but today felt different. The deep space sensors had picked up something unusual 3 hours ago, something that shouldn't exist. "Captain, we're getting a clearer reading now," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the sensor station. "It's definitely artificial. The size is about twice our ship, but the energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Jake nodded and walked over to look at the display. The object appeared as a bright dot on the screen, but the computer was having trouble getting detailed scans. "Any response to our communication attempts?" "Nothing yet, sir. We've tried all standard frequencies and mathematical sequences. Whatever it is, it's either not listening or doesn't understand." Dr. Lisa Parker looked up from her science station. She was the ship's xenobiologist, though, until today, that had been a job title without much practical use. "Captain, if this is what I think it is, we need to be very careful. First contact protocols exist for a reason." Jake had read those protocols many times. They were written by committees of scientists and diplomats who had spent decades thinking about this moment. But reading about meeting aliens and actually doing it were two very different things. "Distance to the object?" Jake asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing slowly," Ben replied. "At our current speed, we'll be within visual range in about 20 minutes. The bridge fell quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Everyone knew they were about to make history. The question was whether it would be good history or bad history. Captain called out Communications Officer Amy Walsh. "I'm picking up something new. It's not on any of our standard frequencies, but it's definitely a signal. It's ... complex, like it's trying to decode our language." Jake felt his heart rate increase. "Put it through the speakers." At first, there was only static. Then came a series of tones that seemed almost musical. The tones gradually changed, becoming more structured, more like speech patterns. After several minutes, words began to form. "Greetings, small vessel. We are ... peaceful ... request." Communication. The voice was strange, with odd pauses and pronunciations, but it was clearly trying to speak English. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Everyone was staring at the speakers in amazement. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel. US's Horizon," he said slowly and clearly. "We are peaceful explorers. We mean no harm." "Understood, Captain Morrison. We are ... relieved. We have been studying your radio signals for many years, we hoped. Your species was ready for contact. May we ... approach your vessel?" Dr. Parker quickly moved to Jake's side. "Captain, recommend we meet them halfway. Shows good faith without giving up." "Tactical advantage," Jake nodded. "Unknown vessel. We suggest meeting at the halfway point between our positions. We're adjusting our course now." "Agreed we are ... excited to meet you. This is ... historic moment for both species." It's the USS Horizon. Changed course. Jake ordered the crew to prepare for visual contact. The main screen switched to external cameras, showing the dark space ahead. Slowly, a shape began to appear in the distance. "My God," whispered Dr. Parker. The alien ship was beautiful in a way that human ships were not, or human vessels were. Built for function with straight lines and practical designs, this ship seemed to flow like liquid crystal. It was translucent in places, with lights moving through its structure like blood through veins. The ship seemed alive rather than manufactured. "Captain, they're requesting permission to send a small shuttle to our docking bay," Amy reported. Jake hesitated. Letting aliens onto his ship was a big risk, but turning them away might be an even bigger one. "Granted, I have security teams standing by, but keep them out of sight." "Dr. Parker, you're with me in the docking bay." 20 minutes later, Jake and Lisa stood in the docking bay wearing their best dress uniforms. The alien shuttle was unlike anything in human technology. It seemed to be made of the same flowing crystal material as the larger ship, and Jake couldn't see any obvious engines or thrusters. The shuttle's door opened with a soft musical sound. What stepped out was definitely not human, but it wasn't the green-skinned monster from old movies either. The being was tall and graceful, with pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to glow softly from within. It had 4 arms instead of 2, and its eyes were larger than human eyes, with colors that shifted like oil on water. Captain Morrison, the being said, its voice now much clearer. I am Ambassador Kira Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective. This is a great honor. Jake stepped forward, trying to remember his diplomatic training. Ambassador Veltar, welcome aboard the USS Horizon. This is Dr. Lisa Parker, our Chief Science Officer. Kira's large eyes focused on Lisa with obvious interest. Scientist. Excellent. We have much to discuss about your species. Your evolution is... remarkable. Our evolution? Lisa asked. Yes, you see, Dr. Parker. Most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved on what we call garden worlds. Planets with stable climates, abundant resources, and minimal dangers. Your Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. Death world? Jake asked. Kira made a gesture with her 4 arms that might have been the alien equivalent of a shrug. Your planet is one of the most hostile environments known to produce intelligent life. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, frequent natural disasters, unstable tectonic activity, and an atmosphere that would kill most species within minutes. But it's our home, Lisa said. We're adapted to it. Exactly, Kira replied, her eyes brightening. That is what makes you so extraordinary. Most species require environmental suits and life support systems to survive on worlds much gentler than yours. You have evolved to thrive in conditions that would be considered torture for most galactic citizens. Jake was beginning to understand. So we're tougher than most aliens? Much tougher. But that creates ... complications. You see? Captain, the galactic community has certain views about species from death worlds. They consider such species to be unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Dangerous how? Jake asked. Kira walked over to one of the docking bay's support beams. She touched it gently with one of her hands, and Jake was surprised to see her fingers bend backward at the pressure. I cannot even lean against your ship's structure without risking injury. My bones are hollow like those of your birds. Our muscles are designed for fine manipulation, not strength. Most galactic species are similar. Dr. Parker was taking notes. Rapidly? So you're saying we're physically superior to most aliens? In terms of raw physical capability, yes. But we have advanced technology that compensates for our limitations. We can manipulate matter at the molecular level, create energy fields, and travel faster than light. Your species has none of these capabilities. Jake felt a mix of pride and worry. So we're strong but primitive? Not primitive, Captain. Different. Your species has developed remarkable ingenuity and adaptability. You solve problems through creativity and determination rather than advanced technology.
This is both
impressive and concerning to the galactic community. Why concerning? Lisa asked. Kira's expression became more serious. Because history shows that species from death worlds often become either great protectors or great threats. Your natural aggression and resilience, combined with rapid technological advancement, makes you unpredictable.
Ow.
Jake didn't like the sound of that. Are you saying we're not welcome in your galactic community? I am saying that acceptance will not be automatic. The Galactic Council will need to evaluate your species carefully. They will want to know whether humans can be trusted with advanced technology and whether you can coexist peacefully with more fragile species. And if we can't prove that, Kira's forearms moved in what Jake was beginning to recognize as a sign of discomfort, then humanity will remain isolated on Earth, considered too dangerous for galactic contact. The weight of the moment settled on Jake's shoulders. The decisions made in the next few weeks would determine humanity's future among the stars. They would either join a galactic community or be left alone in the dark. What do we need to do? Jake asked. The Council has agreed to consider humanity for membership, but you must undergo the galactic trials. These tests will evaluate your species' readiness for advanced technology and peaceful coexistence. Any species from a death world ever pass these trials? Kira's silence was answer. Enough. But, she continued, I believe your species has potential. You have shown remarkable adaptability in our short interaction. Perhaps you will be the first. Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded slightly. They both understood that this was humanity's one chance to join something bigger than themselves. We accept, Jake said. When do we begin? 3 months after first contact, the human delegation ship approached Nexus Prime, the massive space station that served as the center of galactic government. Helen Brooks, Earth's chief diplomat, stood at the observation deck, watching the station grow larger on the screens. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of what she was seeing. Nexus Prime was bigger than any human city. The station stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions, with thousands of docking, bays, residential areas, and government buildings. Ships of dozens of different designs moved around the station like insects around a flower. Some were sleek and curved like the Zephyrian vessels, others were geometric and angular, and a few looked like they were grown rather than built. "It's incredible," said Dr. Alex Chen, the mission's lead scientist. He was recording everything through his instruments, trying to understand the technology that made such a structure possible. The energy requirements alone should be impossible. With any known physics, Colonel Ryan Davis, the military advisor, was less impressed with the beauty and more concerned with the defenses. "Look at those weapon arrays. Each one of those platforms could probably destroy our entire fleet." Maria Santos, the cultural specialist, was studying the different ship designs through binoculars. Each species seems to have completely different approaches to technology. This is going to be like trying to understand 50 different civilizations at once. Helen nodded but kept her focus on the bigger picture. Their job was to convince the Galactic Council that humanity deserved membership in this vast community. Based on what Ambassador Kira had told them, it was not going to be easy. Their ship was guided to a docking bay deep inside the station. As they prepared to disembark, Helen gathered her team for a final briefing. "Remember, we're representing all of humanity here. Every word we speak, every action we take, will be judged by species that have been spacefaring for thousands of years. We need to show them that we belong here." The docking bay was filled with beings that looked like they had stepped out of a dozen different science fiction movies. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. What struck Helen most was how carefully they all moved, as if they were afraid of breaking something. Ambassador Kira was waiting for them, along with several other Zephyrians. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," she said. "I hope you are prepared for what comes next. The Council is eager to meet you, but I must warn you that the reception may not be entirely friendly." "What do you mean?" Helen asked, as they walked through corridors filled with alien art and architecture. The galactic community operates on a hierarchy based on technological advancement and homeworld classification. The more advanced your technology, and the more hospitable your homeworld, the higher your status. Unfortunately, this places humanity at a significant disadvantage. They entered a vast chamber where hundreds of beings were gathered. At the front of the room, on elevated platforms, sat the representatives of the most advanced species. Helen could see immediately that the beings on the higher platforms looked more delicate and ethereal than those on the lower levels. "The ethereal," Kira whispered, pointing to the highest platform. "They evolved on a world with perfect conditions. No predators, no diseases, no natural disasters. Their technology allows them to manipulate space and time itself." The Etherians were barely visible, appearing more like shifting patterns of light than solid beings. Below them sat the Crystalline Collective, beings made of what looked like living gemstones. Each level down contained species that looked progressively more solid and physical. "Where do we sit?" Helen asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "The lowest level," Kira replied sadly, "with the other species that have not yet proven their worth to the Council." As they made their way down to the bottom level, Helen noticed that the other beings were giving them a wide berth. Some looked curious, others seemed afraid, and a few appeared openly hostile. The humans took their seats on simple chairs that seemed almost primitive compared to the floating platforms and energy fields used by the Assyrian kings of high-ranking species. The session began with a series of presentations from new applicant species. Each one demonstrated their technological achievements and explained why they deserved membership in the galactic community. Helen watched as species after species showed off inventions that seemed impossible by human standards. When it was humanity's turn, Dr. Chen stepped forward with their prepared presentation. He began with Earth's development of nuclear energy, space travel, and computer technology. The audience listened politely, but Helen could see that they were not impressed. "Your nuclear technology is primitive and dangerous," commented a representative. "From the aquatic builders, you mastered clean fusion power 3,000 years ago. Your space travel relies on chemical rockets," added a member of the hive mind species. "We achieved faster-than-light travel before your species discovered fire. Your computers are based on binary logic," said an Etherian, its voice like music. "We use quantum probability networks that can predict future events." Dr. Chen tried to explain the ingenuity and rapid development that humanity had shown, but the council members were not interested. To them, humans were just another primitive species that had barely learned to leave their homeworld. Then came the question that Helen had been dreading. A representative from the Valkyrie, a species that looked like giant insects, stood up on one of the middle platforms. "We have reviewed the data about your homeworld. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. How do we know that your species' violent nature will not be a threat to peaceful galactic civilization?" The chamber fell silent. Helen could feel hundreds of alien eyes focusing on her. This was the moment she had prepared for, but it was still terrifying. "We are not violent by choice," Helen said, standing up. "We are products of our environment. Yes, Earth is a dangerous world, but that danger taught us to be strong, to adapt, and to work together. We have moved beyond the violence of our past and learned to cooperate." "But you still maintain military forces," the Valkyrie representative continued. "You still have weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. How can we trust species that live under constant threat of self-destruction?" Colonel Davis started to stand, but Helen motioned for him to remain seated. "We have weapons because we learned from history that being defenseless leads to being conquered. But we have also learned that cooperation is stronger than conflict. We have spent the last century building alliances and working together to solve global problems." A member of the Crystalline Collective spoke up, its voice like the sound of wind chimes. "Other species have evolved beyond the need for individual survival instincts. We share collective consciousness and work for the good of all. Your species still operates on primitive competition and individual self-interest." Maria Santos stood up this time. "With respect, that's not entirely accurate. Yes, we value individual achievement, but we also have a long history of cooperation and sacrifice for the greater good. Our individual differences actually make us stronger as a whole." "Primitive," muttered one of the representatives from a higher platform. "They think diversity is strength rather than unity." Helen felt her frustration growing, but she kept her voice calm. "Perhaps we have different definitions of strength. We believe that a community that can adapt and overcome challenges is stronger than one that avoids challenges entirely." Comment caused a stir among the council members. Several species began talking among themselves in languages that the translation system couldn't handle. Helen realized that she might have offended them, but she had spoken the truth as she saw it. The session continued for several more hours, with various council members asking questions about human society, technology, and intentions. Most of the questions seemed designed to highlight humanity's primitive nature and violent history. By the end of the session, Helen felt exhausted and defeated. As the council members began to file out, Helen noticed that they moved very carefully, as if they were afraid of injuring themselves on the furniture. Their movements were graceful, but seemed almost fragile. She began to understand that the physical differences between humans and most galactic species were even greater than she had realized. Ambassador Kira approached them as they prepared to leave. "That went better than I expected," she said, though her expression suggested otherwise. "Better?" Helen asked. "They treated us like dangerous children." "Yes, but they also seemed curious." Several species mentioned that they had never seen such rapid technological development or such physical resilience. "The Council has agreed to allow you to attempt the galactic trials." "What exactly are these trials?" Colonel Davis asked. 5 tests designed to evaluate a species' readiness for advanced technology and peaceful coexistence. The tests cover logic and reasoning, scientific innovation, conflict resolution, survival capabilities, and leadership under pressure. Has any species from a death world ever passed all 5 trials? Helen asked. Kira's forearms moved in that gesture Helen had learned. Meant discomfort. The first trial took place on a world called Serenity, which lived up to its name in every way. The planet had perfect weather, gentle breezes, and landscapes that looked like they had been painted by artists. Dr. Sam Mitchell, the human team's psychologist, stood with his teammates at the starting point of the logic trial, watching other species prepare for the challenge. This place is beautiful, said Katie Williams, the human team's engineer. It's like a paradise. It's too perfect, muttered Jake Thompson, their survival expert. This makes me nervous when everything looks this good. The trial administrators, members of the Etherian species, floated above the contestants like glowing clouds. Their voices came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Welcome to the logic and reasoning trial. You will be presented with a series of puzzles that increase in complexity. You must solve them while maintaining complete emotional stability. Any display of frustration, anger, or excessive excitement will result in immediate disqualification. Sam looked around at the other teams, Crystalline Collective representatives. Were setting up sophisticated computing devices. The aquatic builders were connecting to their hive mind network. The Valkyrie were organizing their equipment with military precision. Every team seemed to have advanced technology to help them. Do we have? Katie asked. Just ourselves, Sam replied, and maybe that's enough. The first puzzle appeared as a 3-dimensional hologram floating in the air. It was a complex geometric shape that needed to be rotated and manipulated to fit through a series of openings. Most teams immediately began running calculations on their devices, but Sam just stared at the puzzle. I see it, he said quietly. It's not about the math, it's about perspective. While other teams worked furiously with their computers, Sam walked around the hologram looking at it from different angles. After a few minutes, he reached out and simply rotated the shape with his hands. It slipped through the opening easily. Other teams stopped what they were doing and stared. Several of them looked frustrated that the humans had solved the puzzle so quickly using such a simple method. The second puzzle was more complex, again involving pattern recognition and a series of symbols. Again, most teams used their advanced analysis tools, but the human team approached it differently. They split up, each person focusing on a different aspect of the pattern. I see musical patterns, said Katie, who had studied music before becoming an engineer. I see mathematical progressions, added Jake, who had learned to recognize patterns in nature during his survival training. I see psychological symbols, said Sam, recognizing elements from his studies of human behavior. Together, they solved the puzzle faster than teams with quantum computers and hive mind networks. The Etherian administrators seemed surprised by their success, as the puzzles became more difficult. Something unexpected happened. The trial environment began to change. Perfect weather started to shift, with sudden wind gusts and temperature changes. The gentle lighting became harsh and flickering. The beautiful landscapes were replaced by confusing maze-like structures. This is not part of the original trial parameters, announced one of the Crystalline Collective representatives. We demand a restart under proper conditions. The environment is unstable, complained an aquatic builder. Our equipment cannot function properly in these conditions. Many of the teams began to panic as their technological solutions failed to work in the changing environment. Their computers couldn't adapt to the new conditions quickly enough, and their careful preparations were useless. But the human team barely noticed the changes. They had grown up on a world where conditions changed constantly, where adaptation was necessary for survival. Instead of fighting the changes, they worked with them. The wind pattern is giving us clues, Katie observed, watching how the air currents moved around the puzzle structures. The temperature changes are following the same rhythm as the symbol patterns, Jake added, using his survival skills to read environmental cues. And the psychological pressure is part of the test, Sam concluded. They're not just testing our logic, they're testing how we handle stress and uncertainty. while other teams struggled with their failing equipment and demanded that the trial be stopped. The humans continued solving puzzles. They used their natural ability to adapt and improvise, skills that had been developed over millions of years of evolution on a dangerous world. By the end of the first day, half of the participating teams had been eliminated. Most had failed not because they couldn't solve the puzzles, but because they couldn't handle the changing conditions. The human team was not only still in the trial, but they were leading in points. The second trial took place in the Void Labs, a space station designed for scientific research under extreme conditions. The challenge was to develop solutions to theoretical problems using limited resources and time constraints. Each team will be given a scenario involving a failing colony ship, announced the trial administrator, a member of the hive mind species. You must develop a solution to save the colonists using only the materials provided. You have 6 hours. The scenario was grim. A colony ship with 10,000 passengers was losing life support systems. The main computer was failing, the air recycling system was breaking down, and the ship's hull was damaged. Each team was given a box of basic materials and told to create a solution. The crystalline collective immediately began designing a complex quantum processing system to replace the failing computer. The aquatic builders started work on an advanced biological air filtration system. The Velkari began constructing military-grade hull repair, Nobo tasked. Katie looked at the materials in their box and frowned. We don't have the technology to compete. With these solutions, maybe we don't need to, Sam said. Let's think about this differently. What would we do if this was a real emergency and we only had basic materials?
Ow!
Instead of trying to create advanced technology, the human team focused on simple, reliable solutions. They designed a manual air recycling system that could be operated by the colonists themselves. They created a communication network using basic electronics that could work even if the main computer failed. They developed a hull repair system using materials that could be found on any colony ship. It's not fancy, Katie admitted, but it will work. As the time limit approached, teams began presenting their solutions. The Crystalline Collective's quantum computer was impressive, but required materials that wouldn't be available on a colony ship. The Aquatic Builder's biological system was elegant, but took too long to implement. The Velkari's nanobots were effective, but could only be controlled by their specific technology. When the human team presented their solution, the other team seemed unimpressed.
Ow.
Their design looked primitive compared to the advanced systems. The other species had created... This is very basic, commented the trial administrator. How do you know it will work? Because we've tested it, Sam replied. We built a working prototype and ran it through failure scenarios. It's simple enough that anyone can operate it, robust enough to work under emergency conditions, and made from materials that any colony ship would have. The administrator studied their design more carefully. Interesting. You have prioritized reliability over sophistication. When people's lives are at stake, sophistication doesn't matter if it doesn't work, Katie said. The third trial was the one that worried the human team the most. It took place on Gladius Prime, a world designed to test conflict resolution skills. Most galactic species had evolved beyond physical confrontation, preferring to resolve disputes through mediation and technological solutions. Each team will face a series of scenarios involving conflict between different groups, explained the trial administrator, a member of the Pacifist Alliance. You must resolve these conflicts without violence and in a way that satisfies all parties. The first scenario involved 2 groups of settlers arguing over water rights. The Crystalline Collective tried to solve it by creating a complex legal framework. The Aquatic Builders suggested technological solutions that would increase water production. The Velkari proposed strict regulations enforced by authority figures, but when the human team approached the problem, they did something different. Instead of imposing a solution from above, they sat down with both groups and listened to their concerns. You're both worried about the same thing, Sam observed after hearing from both sides. You're afraid there won't be enough water for your families. That's correct, said one of the settler representatives. The other group is taking more than their share. No, we're not, replied the other group's leader. We're just trying to ensure our children have enough to drink. Lisa Turner, the former Marine on the human team, spoke up. What if we approached this differently? Instead of fighting over the existing water supply, what if we worked together to find more water? The idea was simple but effective. Instead of competing for limited resources, the two groups could cooperate to expand the available resources. The human team helped them organize joint exploration teams and shared work groups. This is not a typical solution, the trial administrator noted. Most species would have imposed a regulatory framework to manage the conflict. We've learned that cooperation usually works better than regulation, Lisa explained. The fourth trial took place on Havoc, a planet that lived up to its frightening name. As the transport ships approached the world's surface, Jake Thompson pressed his face against the window and smiled for the first time since the trials began. The planet below looked like a more dangerous version of Earth, with active volcanoes, violent storms, toxic swamps, and jagged mountain ranges. Finally, he said to his teammates, "A place that feels like home." Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the team's marine biologist, was studying the environmental readings on her tablet. The atmosphere has 3 times normal radiation levels. The water contains 17 different toxins, and the temperature varies by 60 degrees depending on location. "Sounds like a Tuesday in Death Valley," Jake replied cheerfully. Tom Anderson, their combat medic, was checking their equipment supplies. "They've given us basic survival gear and emergency medical supplies. Most teams also have environmental suits and advanced life support systems." "Do we need those?" Emma asked. Jake shook his head. "Let's see how we do without them first. If we can't handle this place naturally, we don't deserve to call ourselves Deathworlders." As their transport landed, they could see the other teams. Preparing for the survival challenge, the Crystalline Collective members were encasing themselves in protective energy fields. The aquatic builders were setting up portable habitat modules. The Velkari were deploying military-grade environmental suits and sensors. The trial administrator, a member of the Hardy Species Alliance, looked more robust than the delicate aliens from previous trials, but even they were wearing protective gear. "Welcome to the survival trial. You must navigate to 5 checkpoint stations scattered across this continent. Each checkpoint contains supplies and communication equipment. You have 72 hours to reach all 5 checkpoints and return to this landing site." "What's the catch?" asked one of the Velkari representatives. "The catch is Havoc itself. This world will test every aspect of your survival capabilities. Equipment failure is common due to the environmental conditions. Weather patterns change rapidly and without warning. Local wildlife is aggressive and dangerous."
Ow.
Many teams never complete this trial. As the teams dispersed in different directions, Jake led his teammates toward the first checkpoint. While other species moved carefully in their protective gear, the humans walked at a normal pace, breathing the toxic air and feeling the harsh environment on their skin. "This air tastes terrible," Emma commented, wrinkling her nose. "But it's not killing us," Tom pointed out. "My readings show we're processing the toxins just fine. Our liver and kidney functions are handling it. Evolution on Earth prepared us for this," Jake explained as they climbed over rough terrain that would challenge most species, even with advanced equipment. "We've been dealing with hostile environments for millions of years." The first checkpoint was located in a volcanic region, where the ground temperature could melt most metals. Other teams were struggling to reach it with their cooling systems and protective gear, but the human team simply found rocks to step on and moved carefully through the heat. Checkpoint 1 reached, Jake reported into his communicator. "No equipment. Failures, no injuries." "Confirmed," came the reply. "You are the first team to reach Checkpoint 1. How are you managing the thermal environment?" "We're from a planet with deserts," Emma replied. "Heat doesn't bother us much." As they headed toward the second checkpoint, they encountered their first piece of local wildlife. A creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a tank charged out of some toxic bushes, heading straight for them. Most galactic species would have used energy weapons or force fields to deal with the threat. Instead, Jake picked up a large rock and threw it at the creature's head with accuracy that surprised even his teammates. The creature stopped, shook its head, and decided to find easier prey elsewhere. Did you just scare off an alien predator by throwing a rock at it? Tom asked in amazement. Predators are the same everywhere, Jake explained. They want easy meals, not fights. Show them you're more trouble than you're worth, and they'll usually leave you alone. The second checkpoint was in a swamp filled with acidic water and poisonous plants. Other teams were having serious problems with equipment corrosion and toxic exposure. The humans found the environment unpleasant, but manageable. The acid levels aren't much worse than some industrial sites on Earth, Emma observed, taking water samples. And these plants are trying to warn us they're dangerous with bright colors and strong smells. It's like they want us to avoid them. Natural. Selection taught both predators and prey to communicate, Tom agreed. The dangerous stuff usually advertises itself. They were making excellent time when they heard a distress call over the emergency frequency. A team from the Gentle Species Collective was trapped in a rock slide near the third checkpoint. Their protective equipment had been damaged, and they couldn't survive in the open environment. This is Jake Thompson of the human team, he responded. We're about 2 kilometers from your position. We can reach you. Negative human team, came the reply from the trial administrators. The environment around that position is too dangerous for unprotected species. Wait for the rescue teams with proper equipment. How long will that take? Approximately 6 hours. Jake looked at his teammates. The alien team might not survive. 6 hours in those conditions? We're going anyway. Jake, if we leave the trial route, we might be disqualified, Emma warned. Some things are more important than passing tests, Tom said. Checking his medical supplies, they changed course and headed toward the distress signal. The terrain was even worse than what they had already crossed. With unstable ground, toxic gas vents, and aggressive wildlife, but the human team moved through it like they were hiking in a difficult but familiar national park. They found the stranded team huddled in a small cave, their equipment sparking and failing around them. The aliens looked fragile and terrified. Nothing like the confident beings the humans had met in the council chambers. You came for us, whispered one of the Gentle Species representatives. A being that looked like it was made of delicate crystal formations, but you have no protective equipment. You'll die in this environment. Not really, Emma said, kneeling down to examine the injured aliens. This place is dangerous, but we've seen worse. Tom began treating the aliens' injuries with basic medical supplies, improvising techniques that worked for their different physiologies. Jake and Emma worked to stabilize the cave and create a safer shelter using nothing but rocks, plant fibers, and basic tools. How are you doing this? Asked one of the injured aliens. Its species has no environmental protection, no advanced medical technology, no sophisticated equipment. We have something else, Tom explained as he fashioned a splint for an alien's injured limb. We have experience with places that try to kill us. The rescue took 4 hours. By the time they delivered the alien team to safety, the human team had missed their chance to reach the remaining checkpoints within the time limit. They had failed the trial by the official rules, but word of their rescue spread quickly through the galactic community. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive barbarians began to see them differently. Here was a team that had risked their own success to save strangers, using nothing but natural abilities and improvised solutions. You failed to complete the survival trial, the administrator informed them after the rescue. However, your actions have been noted by the council. We didn't fail, Jake replied. We just had different priorities. The fifth and final trial was the Leadership Challenge, designed to test species' ability to coordinate and inspire others. Under extreme pressure, the scenario involved managing a crisis on a failing space station with multiple teams that had to work together to survive. Captain Morrison, who had been following the trials from Nexus Prime, was allowed to lead the human effort for this final test. As he studied the crisis scenario, he realized that this trial would be different from the others. Success would require not just human skills, but the ability to work with alien species who had very different approaches to problem solving. The space station was losing power. Life support was failing, and various systems were breaking down throughout the massive structure. Multiple teams from different species were scattered across the station, each with different capabilities and limitations. This is Captain Morrison of the human team, he announced over the communication system, assuming coordination responsibility. All teams, Please report your status and capabilities. The responses came back quickly, but they revealed a problem. Each species was trying to solve the crisis using their own advanced technology, but their solutions weren't compatible with each other. The crystalline collective's energy networks interfered with the aquatic builder's biological systems. Valkyrie's military protocols conflicted with the pacifist alliance's cooperative methods. Stop, Morrison commanded. Everyone stop what you're doing. We're thinking about this wrong. Human Captain, came a response from the Etherian team. Our technology is far more advanced than yours. We should coordinate this effort. Your technology is amazing, Morrison agreed, but it's not working. We need to try a different approach. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so crowded. Representatives from every known species filled the vast hall, all waiting to hear the results of humanity's trials. Captain Morrison stood with his team at the bottom level, but today, the arrangement felt different. Many of the higher-ranking species were looking down at them with curiosity rather than disgust. Ambassador Kira floated over to them before the session began. Whatever happens today, you should know that you have already changed things. The rescue on Havoc has been discussed throughout the galaxy. Many species are asking questions they have never asked before. What kind of questions? Lynn Brooks asked questions about whether our current system truly measures what matters most, Kira replied. Whether technological advancement without physical capability creates weakness rather than strength. The session began with the trial results. The human team had passed 4 of the 5 trials and failed 1 due to their rescue mission. By the traditional standards, this should have meant rejection from the galactic community, however announced. The chief administrator, an ancient Etherian whose light patterns had grown dim with age. The council must consider the unprecedented nature of these results. Never before has a species from a Class 12 Deathworld performed so well in our trials. A representative from the Valkyrie stood up. The humans failed the survival trial. By our laws, failure in any trial means rejection. They failed to complete the trial requirements, corrected another voice. It was one of the gentle species representatives who had been rescued on Havoc, but they succeeded in something more important. They saved lives at the cost of their own advancement. That is not logical, stated a member of the Crystalline Collective. Sacrificing personal success for strangers serves no evolutionary purpose. Captain Morrison stood up. With respect, that's exactly the point. We don't do everything for evolutionary purpose. Sometimes we do things because they're right. Primitive emotional thinking, muttered one of the higher-ranking species. Maybe, Morrison agreed, but it works. The debate continued for hours, with different species arguing about humanity's place in the galactic community. Some insisted that the traditional hierarchy must be maintained. Others suggested that perhaps the trials needed to be reconsidered. Then, everything changed. Alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime. Emergency lights flashed, and the station's defensive systems activated. Through the chamber's massive windows, dark shapes could be seen approaching from deep space. All council members to emergency stations announced the station's AI system. Unknown hostile forces detected. Classification, extreme threat. Beings that emerged from the dark ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They seemed to absorb light and energy, making them difficult to see clearly. When they fired on the station's shields, the energy weapons simply disappeared into their dark forms, making them stronger. Void Hunters, whispered the chief administrator, his light patterns flickering with fear. We thought they were legend. What are Void Hunters? Marson asked, as the chamber erupted into chaos. Energy parasites from beyond our galaxy, Kira explained, her forearms trembling. They consume advanced technology and use it against its creators. They are why several ancient civilizations simply disappeared from galactic records. The station's advanced defenses were failing rapidly. Energy shields collapsed as the Void Hunters absorbed their power. Quantum weapons had no effect on beings that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The most sophisticated military technology in the galaxy was useless against an enemy that fed on sophistication itself. Admiral Sarah Collins, who had been observing the trials from the human delegation ship, contacted the council chambers. "Captain Morrison, we need to coordinate a defense. Alien fleets are in full retreat." Morrison looked around at the panicking council members. Species that had seemed godlike in their technological mastery were now helpless children facing an enemy they couldn't understand. "What are our assets?" Morrison asked over the communication system. "3 human ships with basic kinetic weapons, nuclear missiles, and conventional explosives," Collins replied. "Everything the galactic community considers primitive." "Perfect," Morrison said. "Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need." While the advanced alien species fled to secure areas of the station, the human delegation moved to the command center. Morrison found himself in charge of Nexus Prime's defense, not because he was appointed, but because he was the only one who seemed to know what to do. "The Void Hunters absorb energy and advanced technology," he explained to the terrified alien commanders. "So we don't use energy weapons or advanced technology. We use bullets, explosives, and good old-fashioned tactics." "Kinetic weapons are ineffective against energy-based enemies," protested a Valkyrie military advisor. "Are they energy-based?" Morrison asked. "Or do they just eat energy?" "There's a difference." The first human ship, commanded by Colonel Davis, engaged the Void Hunters with conventional missiles. Instead of being absorbed, the explosives damaged the dark ships, causing them to retreat and regroup. "It's working," Davis reported. "They can't absorb simple chemical explosives. The more basic the weapon, the more effective it is." Morrison began coordinating a defense using the most primitive weapons available. Human ships armed with railguns and chemical rockets. Emergency teams with kinetic rifles and explosive charges. Even maintenance equipment was weaponized, using simple mechanical force against an enemy that fed on sophistication. "This is insane," muttered one of the Etherian observers. "You're fighting star-spanning entities with weapons that are thousands of years obsolete." "Sometimes obsolete is better," Morrison replied as he watched human forces drive back attackers that had defeated entire galactic fleets. The turning point came when Jake Thompson, still wearing his survival gear from the trials, led a boarding party onto one of the Void Hunter ships. Instead of using advanced cutting tools that would be absorbed, they used simple explosives and manual tools to breach the hull. "It's working because we're not playing their game," Jake reported as his team planted conventional bombs throughout the enemy ship. "They're designed to counter advanced civilizations, not crazy Deathworlders with dynamite." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Void Hunter fleet had been destroyed or driven away using tactics and weapons that every advanced species had abandoned centuries ago. The saviors of galactic civilization were the same primitive humans who had been sitting at the bottom of the council hierarchy that morning. In the aftermath, as repair crews worked to fix Nexus Prime, the galactic community faced an uncomfortable truth. Their technological advancement had made them vulnerable to exactly the kind of threat they thought they had evolved beyond. "We owe you our lives," the chief administrator admitted to Morrison as the council reconvened. "All of our lives." "Don't owe us anything," Morrison replied. "Just did what needed to be done." "But why?" asked one of the Crystalline Collective representatives. "Why risk your lives for species that had rejected you?" "Because that's what you do when people are in trouble," Morrison said simply. "You help them." The chief administrator's light pattern shifted to what Morrison had learned was the Etherian equivalent of deep thought. "Perhaps our hierarchy has been based on the wrong criteria. We have valued technological advancement over practical capability, sophistication over reliability, elegance over effectiveness. Different approaches have different strengths," Helen Brooks added. "Maybe the galaxy is stronger when it includes all of them." The new galactic arrangement was announced a week later. Instead of a hierarchy based on technological advancement, the community would operate as a confederation of equals, with each species contributing their unique capabilities to the common good. Humans became the galaxy's troubleshooters and protectors, establishing settlements on worlds too dangerous for other species and serving as the first response to crises that required unconventional solutions. Other species provided the advanced technology and resources that humans lacked, creating a partnership that benefited everyone. Dr. Parker, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, stood in her new office, overlooking the rebuilt sections of Nexus Prime. Through her window, she could see human workers in simple pressure suits working alongside Etherian energy beings and crystalline collective engineers. They were building something new together, something stronger than any single species could create alone. The funny thing is, she said to Captain Morrison during one of his visits, we never wanted to be at the top of some hierarchy. We just wanted to belong somewhere. And now we do, Morrison replied, watching a group of human children playing with young aliens in the station's recreation area. We belong everywhere. The motto of the new human galactic cores was inscribed on a simple metal plaque in the embassy. Born in hell, forged by fire, ready for anything. But below it, in smaller letters, was another line that Parker thought was even more important. Stronger together. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most primitive solution was the best solution. That diversity created strength rather than weakness. And that the willingness to help others was more valuable than any technology.